Welcome back to ATL Day Ones. I am Tenitra. This is Jarvis, and we are glad that you are joining us once again today, whether you are checking us out on one of the various audio platforms that we are on, or you're checking us out on YouTube. And of course, if you are, definitely like us, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to everybody on the Locked On Sports Podcast Network here in Atlanta. We appreciate you guys also giving us comments. We actually read those and we love interacting with you guys. So stick with us. Thank you for sticking with us from day one and continue sticking with us, just like we hope that you stick with the Hawks despite what you saw in game
Yes.
one on Sunday. We know it was
Please come
not
back.
what anyone was looking for out of game one. I'm sure everybody thought it was going to be an uphill battle. Don't get me wrong, coming off of such a dramatic comeback turnaround from that play-in tournament second half against the Cavs, but not the letdown we saw then. However, one game, it's a long series, and you do hope that they bounce back tonight. But a couple things that we want to see in that bounce back tonight, or what we're going to need to see in order for them to get the dub. And we know that that starts, Jarvis, with Trae Young.
Yeah, Trae Young is the guy, and like we talked about yesterday on the show, just far as the Miami Heat had a really good game plan for
Mhm.
how to attack Trae, right?
Yes.
With tight defense, try to get in his face, frustrate him, get him to take some of those ill-advised shots that a lot of people that you know criticize him for. They
Hmm.
criticize him for taking those ill-advised shots, but a lot of times you have to kind of shut up because he makes them.
Yes.
A good number of those
Hmm.
times, almost 38 to 39% of the time. So those one of
Yes.
the things that you have to kind of take a look at when
Hmm.
coming into this game is
Right.
what type of adjustments that Nate McMillan is going to make, and that's one thing that I said that they will do. I believe
Hmm.
that Nate and Trae are going to sit down and say, hey, here's how we're going to attack this thing.
Hmm.
And I think that if Trae can get off to a better start, because for the last three games,
Yeah.
he has gotten off to slow starts. But in those
Hmm.
first two against the Hornets and the Cavaliers, the thing about it is those teams weren't as good as the Heat.
Yeah.
And they were able to kind of hold off until Trae was able to bounce back. So I
Hmm.
think that if Trae gets off to a better start, you implement some of those things that combat some of those things that the Heat were throwing at them, as far as with
Hmm.
the trap and playing that aggressive defense. And I think
Right.
some maybe even pump faking and bringing
Hmm.
that back into the fold, because those guys are really aggressive
Yeah.
in their closeouts to the 3-point line. So I think if they can do that, I think
Hmm.
Trey would definitely have a better game
Yeah.
this time around.
And I think where some of the pressure can be taken off of him, especially because his is an outside game, and we'll look to see Bogdanovich have a bounce back game, because I don't expect them to be 1 for 11 from three. And I don't
Yes.
expect them to be 1 from 20 overall, period, between the two of them. So definitely that'll take some pressure off of him if he knows he can dish out and then somebody can deliver, because we do believe and hope that Nate McMillan and Trae have gone back to the lab and
Right.
figured out how to beat the trap and beat the full court press like they've done all season. I mean, this isn't anything that he hasn't seen before. It's just that the Heat are adept at keeping it going for 48 minutes, right? And in the case of
Yes.
Sunday, 36 minutes. Now, the other piece there that I think is going to be so critical is to take the pressure off Trae Young and your backcourt by getting what you need from your front court. One thing about the Hawks front court, they've actually done very well against the Heat in all of the regular season games so far this season. And so I want to see them get back to doing that. Now, granted, Jarvis, we know they don't have their critical piece, Clint Capella, although
Right.
got
Right.
back into some physical workouts on yesterday. And Travis Schlenk talked about that. And we've seen video as well of him getting back into some physical things. So maybe that's encouraging. Maybe he'll have a bounce back similar to what we saw with Giannis Antetokounmpo in last postseason with that same injury, right? But
Right.
we don't know if and when that's going to happen. So you work with what you have. So that was one of the things I wanted to drill down on today, kind of walking through as many of the bigs as time will permit in terms of what we want to see from them. And even, Jarvis, some possibilities for Nate to do some adjustments in that lineup. So let's start with the obvious, which would be John Collins. You brought him back to the lineup
Yeah.
sooner rather than later because you knew you needed him to jumpstart you really more defensively. And I think we called it out even yesterday with offensive rebounds. That's a place where we're lacking to keep the
Mm-hmm.
Heat from second chance points. But you're all even going to need some more offense from him as well. Like 10 points, and some of those points, let's be honest, were late in the game.
Garbage points,
There
garbage.
you go.
Yep.
Trash points. Yeah.
Yep.
So we're going to need some of that imposing of the will in some way, shape, or form early on when you get those easy buckets. And we know his hand is hurting him a little bit, or, fingers still bothering him a little bit. But listen, it's the playoffs. Everybody's in pain right now. You got to tough this thing out, and you got to make the Heat feel you inside.
Got to suck it up, Buttercup, and that's basically what it boils down to. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna go out there, there's no excuses. I mean, because like you said, you're a professional, and when you think about what John Collins can bring to the table,
Mm-hmm.
that he brings some good things to the table.
Yes.
And the thing about him, I think the thing that really stands out to me as far as him as a player, I
Mm-hmm.
think that you don't have to call plays for him in order for him to get buckets.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the identity crisis that I believe that he's kind of had as a player,
Mm-hmm.
as he's grown and become
Right.
more, a veteran and everything, and start and being
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more vocal. So I think for him, he has to be able to crash those boards. Like he has
Yes.
to. I'm talking about 10 to 12. Like I need at
Easily.
least 10 to 12 from John tonight. Like there's no excuse as to why he can't get that,
Mm-hmm.
because, like I said, Miami. If we're going to point out a weakness,
Yes.
that up front, that might be the weakness, because
Mm-hmm.
Bam is such a super freakish athlete. He can
Yeah.
kind of move around as if
Mm-hmm.
he's a wing guy. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's just built like that. That's kind of what he does. So I think that John has to crash those boards tonight. He has to get at least 10 to 12,
Yeah.
and like you said, and figure out how to put the ball in the hoop, because like I said, he doesn't need plays called for him in order for him
Right.
to put points on the board, and that's because he's so athletic and he
Mm-hmm.
can work the pick and roll. And I think
Yes.
I want to see some pick and roll with him as well, and I think
Yeah.
that'll help the Hawks offensively kind of get some things going moving.
Yeah, and some of those easy buckets that he missed at the end of the pick and roll, or not really capitalizing, and I say capitalizing because that's bread and butter for our bigs, is
Right.
capitalizing on that alley oop, if you will. So just missing some of the things that have become kind of his signature with Trae. Hopefully, coming back in the second game and getting back in that rhythm, we'll see him be more effective. And the interesting thing will be for me, Jarvis, does he play at the 5 or the 4? Because
Mm.
if he plays at the 5, that could be intriguing. That could be an interesting matchup, maybe even potentially a better matchup against Bam Adebayo versus, say, what we're seeing out of Onyeka Okongwu. But speaking of Onyeka Okongwu, should he get the start at center again, we know we've got to get more than 7 rebounds. That's not
Yeah.
going to cut it. We need double-digit rebounds from him as well. He played a bit of a cleaner game, so he wasn't in, I'll be nice and say, as much foul trouble early as we normally have seen from him.
Yes. Yes.
So if he can, at least, that's the one area where he was effective, is just playing a cleaner game of defending. So if we can see what we saw in the first game from him, couple that with more rebounding, like you said, more crashing of the boards, and really just kind of banging inside, and at least making the Heat, keeping them honest
Right.
and
Yeah.
giving us a little bit more even on offense, that would be good to see from Double O as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the bigs are going to be key in tonight's game. Like you said, with Onyeka Okongwu, and if you're going to put JC at the 5,
Hmm.
put DeAndre at the 4.
You could.
And that can be something
Most
that you
definitely
can kind of
could.
play around with the small ball lineup and kind of
Hmm.
run. I think if they get out and run a little bit,
Hmm.
I think that might be to their advantage as well. So I
Yeah.
think that the Hawks have a really good chance tonight of trying to bounce back, like we mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
and hopefully we'll see Nate make those necessary adjustments, and the Hawks have an opportunity. Because
Yeah.
if they don't win, I'm not too concerned.
Right.
But if they do get a win, like that's all you ask, right? That'll kind of wipe away the bad performance in game 1,
Hmm.
because all you ask is just get one on the road, because they
Yes.
say the series doesn't start until somebody wins on the road. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. And that's so true. And it takes the pressure off of you from having to come home and win both games, because what you don't want to do is go down 3-1, go back to Miami for game 5, and have them have the opportunity to close out on you. Now, one big that really did still shine, and we want to see him shine again, whether he stays in the starting lineup coming from the 4, or whether we see him coming off the bench, and he probably come off the bench very early. But that's Danilo Gallinari. He is the one guy, maybe second to Trae, of course, but he's the one guy who's given us the most consistency, other than our CC being out. But Gallo has given us consistency, not just in the postseason, but really if you look at that last month of play, whether he was in the starting lineup or coming back from or coming off the bench, if you will. So he's somebody that I want to see just continue. And even if it's just a little uptick, right? From 17 points and 5 rebounds, a couple more rebounds if we can get that from him. And maybe if he can get the Hawks started, get them going from the 3-point line, I think that'll be something that could jumpstart them as well. But once again, too, one thing we have not mentioned, and I know we got to wrap up, but second unit, bench mob, just show up a little bit. And
Just a
that
little
could
bit.
also go a long
Yeah.
way too. Just a
Just
little
a
bit.
little bit. Yeah. Starting with Bo. Starting with Bo. Bogdan.
Starting with,
You
yeah,
got you got to get
exactly.
the party started.
Yeah, if Bogey gets the party started, it's a party. It's a party. So when we come back, apparently somebody's party got rained on. Somebody's parade got rained on this past weekend in the USFL, and it is a head scratcher for Jay and me. So we're going to talk to you guys about it when we get back on the other side. It is ATL Day Ones. We'll see you on the other side.